In today's video, I have a very interesting one for you guys, and I debated making a semi-normal video that I typically do every single day, but I feel like today is just so different, it's so unique, so special, and so dangerous that I felt the need to kind of just break down this whole event, and that's what today's video is going to be about. So that's why we're looking at current radar. We're going to kind of break down what's happening as of 12:52 p.m. I am going to be uploading this video immediately once it's ready, so this is not going to be one that comes out at 6 p.m. This is coming out much earlier so that hopefully a lot of you can see this before the storms strike you if you live down there. So just a special episode today. We're going to break it down. So, I mean, we can see already as of just 12:52, we have a lot of storms already flaring up in this area between Louisiana, parts of Mississippi, especially eastern Arkansas, and then into Tennessee as well. We're looking at the low resolution, kind of just like national radar. We're going to break down some of the high resolution stuff right now. So let me go ahead and switch us over to some single site radar. And we're going to break down some of these tornado warnings that are ongoing right now. So let's take a look at this one. I mean, we already have a tornado warning here by Brookhaven. This is radar indicated. As far as I know, there has been no confirmed tornadoes within the last couple of hours, you know, in really the Saturday severe weather yet, but that is going to change very quickly. We could see the tremendous amount of lightning being picked up on this. I mean, as we just zoom in, it's just like everywhere lightning strikes. So I can't imagine the way it's sounding right there in Brookhaven or Woolworth or Wesson there in Mississippi. Crazy, crazy storm. Down here in Louisiana, we also have a couple of what look to be supercells that are trying to form here north of Baton Rouge. So we can see this one here near central Louisiana, the town, central Louisiana. Don't know who thought of that one. Clinton, Louisiana as well. We have this clear kind of like little bit of a hook echo signature on both of these, really trying to get picked up. So some bad storms down there. We just took a look at this one to the north. I want to take a look near Jackson where we're in the high risk for, I think Jackson is in the high risk. If not, they're just outside of it. So we haven't seen the worst of it yet. This is radar indicated up here as well. And this tornado warning is for Tchula, I don't know how you say that, Eden, Mississippi there, Kruger, Mississippi. All of these areas are in this. And it's really hard to break down. But we have this kind of, again, hook signature in here kind of being picked up, and I'm sure that that's your cell that this tornado warning is for. We do have this one here that is radar indicated, and we did have confirmed tornadoes in the same exact area last night. These were coming in at 1 a.m. Here this morning. We have this just a little bit later. So there was a tornado that tracked just through this area north and east of Greenwood, Mississippi, into areas like Duck Hill. We see areas near Grenada. I don't know how you say that either. But either way, we had a confirmed tornado in there earlier this morning, and now we have tornado warnings flying up. And this is the type of linear embedded supercells we were expecting to see today. You can get these hook signatures along the line. We got a bow echo right here. So damaging wind, tornado threats all throughout this storm system. Now we're just starting out, and I think an important thing to note is this is a good piece of good news. Is typically this is what you like to see, believe it or not, is all of these showers and thunderstorms out ahead of your main line of concern. So I'm kind of doing this zigzag over the main area of concern, these storms that are moving eastward into this eastern Mississippi area, and then eventually into Alabama, where we expect some of the worst conditions. But you like to see these thunderstorms and showers in this area out ahead that I've drawn in because they eat away at some of the potential for these thunderstorms to develop as they move through. We see this a lot in these moderate and high risk days where there's just a lot of potential for thunderstorms because the environment is just so good for thunderstorms that they're just popping up everywhere, even ahead of the cold front. We just see these thunderstorms going crazy because the environment is just so rich for these thunderstorms to develop. This is overall good news, and no matter what happens, it's still going to be very bad. But if this wasn't here, I can tell you right now, this would have been worse. So whatever happens, it could have been worse if these showers and thunderstorms were not in this area. So these are a little bit of good news right now that I do have for you guys in the high risk area. Alabama still relatively dry there. We're going to move over to some model guidance now, break down a few things with you guys. Now, here's your day one categorical convective outlook. Just to remind you guys, we do have a marginal risk for severe weather stretching all the way into the Great Lakes. We have a large slight risk, enhanced risk, moderate risk, and high risk there between Mississippi and Alabama. If you guys are in any of these areas, I want you to pay attention as if this is a tornado outbreak, even if you're in the greens, the dark greens especially, even if you're in the yellow there, because this storm is so intense, because the environment is so rich for these thunderstorms. Dangerous weather cannot be ruled out really anywhere that's expecting thunderstorms today, so please pay attention. But obviously your orange, red, and pink areas are going to be where we're really expecting the worst of the worst to go down. I'm going to zoom this in for you guys just because it'll make it a little clearer to see, but we have this moderate risk from parts of Louisiana into Mississippi, Alabama, Florida Panhandle, even into western Georgia and southern Tennessee here. We all have a level 4 moderate risk, and you guys know what I say. The moderate risk sounds a little bit misleading because moderate makes you think that it's just kind of a medium risk or like in the middle of the pack, but really moderate is the second highest, and high risks are relatively rare. Typically on some of the really, really bad severe weather days, we only have a moderate risk. So I think, moderate risk should have a different name. It should be like high, and then maybe level 5 should be very high. I don't really know, but it doesn't present, the name doesn't represent the risk level very well in my opinion, but expect bad things in there. Even the enhanced risk here for Georgia, North Carolina, Tennessee, Florida Panhandle, Louisiana, parts of Mississippi again. And then, of course, the high risk here between areas of Mississippi and Alabama here, we expect the most potential to fall within this area. And this is going to be where the storms are at very, very soon here. So this is coming very soon. I want to break down some of the parameters we have at play. Obviously, temperatures. We can see this is going to be the high temperatures approximately. Let me see if a couple hours later, maybe it's a little bit warmer. We can tell where the cold front is. There's a sharp cutoff where we drop a good 5 to 10 degrees along this line. So that is where the cold front is, but we could see that these temperatures, they're not hot, but we're looking at, mid 70s for a lot of these folks, low 80s. So it is definitely warm enough to create an environment very, very substantially available for thunderstorm development. When we look at the humidity, the dew points here in particular, typically you're looking for 60s. We have mid to upper 60s, even into the 70s. So this is very, very sufficient moisture for severe weather development. So we have that. And when you put it all together, you get what we call CAPE. That's convective available potential energy. And this is a parameter that tries to show you kind of the available thunderstorm fuel. And it is an equation between temperature and humidity. So you can tell I'm unveiling this. We're kind of taking it step by step to break it all down. But we could see values even in the hundreds here, which is considered marginal, to be honest. 1,000 and above is typically what we look for severe weather. We have a lot of these 1 to 2, even 3,000 amounts coming in for Mississippi. Louisiana, where we don't expect the worst of the severe weather really, has values up into the 3, 4, even 5,000s here. As you can see on the bottom right, it's probably right above where I'm drawing this line here. But when we look at the bottom right, we can see the highest value is 5,629. So 5 times the amount that you need for severe weather to develop. The higher this goes, it doesn't really mean that things are going to be worse or better. Of course, we can see the higher values here in Louisiana, lower values here where we actually expect the worst of the severe weather. So really, you're just looking for enough of this. That's what we're looking for, which again is going to be your mid hundreds to 1,000 debatably. What's interesting to me is this HRRR model that we're going to be using for everything today has the highest values over Mississippi, not Alabama. Of course, this is only for thunderstorm development, so they could develop richly in this area and then move into the less Cape areas and still hold on to that energy. And that might be where we're getting a lot of our thunderstorms over here, not really developing any worse than they once were. We're really going to have to see how it breaks down. But regardless, because of them moving through this area that's highly, highly sufficient for development, they are going to move into this Alabama area, still holding on to that energy. But as we kind of work our way through, we see this Cape value. It does shoot up into Mississippi through the afternoon. This is 3 p.m. today, so a little bit later. We can see values still between 1 and 3,000 over Mississippi. We do see those numbers crawl into about 1,000 to maybe 2,000 over Alabama, but again, it's a little bit less, but definitely enough, I would say. I think with this current look, we are going to have these storms just really rip-roaring straight from Mississippi into Alabama, into Tennessee, into the Florida Panhandle, and even into Georgia. As we take a look at the wind shear, which is going to be a big component for damaging wind, but also tornadoes. This is going to be kind of the wind that is kind of coming in at different angles, hitting some areas of wind from its side, which creates a kind of cylindrical area in the atmosphere that is rotating. And typically we see this in the wintertime. This is worse. In the summertime, it's less bad. The spring's right in between, where we have enough instability and we still have the shear left over from the winter. That's why spring tends to be really bad for tornadoes. What we're watching for is this area of high shear setting up, which should set up some kind of, again, horizontal profiles of rotation. And then the other ingredient you need for tornadoes to form is going to be a downdraft within the storm, or a microburst, and that kind of shoves that rotation that's kind of horizontal. I wish you could kind of see me right now. I could show the hand motions that I'm doing, but it's like horizontal. The downdraft pushes that horizontal area down towards a vertical area of rotation. That's when we start to get those wall clouds and eventually a lot of times tornadoes. So we really want to see lower wind shear, but today we're gonna have very, very high. Anywhere in the reds is definitely going to be considered like moderate to high wind shear, but the browns, and then especially these kind of like pinkish areas, salmon colored areas, are going to be very, very high shear. And this is 1 p.m., 2 p.m. We see those high areas coming into Mississippi, Alabama, 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m. We have literally breaking the scale amounts of shear going on in these areas. We are at the highest possible values. We see a max of 104. This bar only goes up to 100. So we are literally breaking the scale here at Weatherbell. And this is telling me that not only are we going to likely, we already know this, but we're not only going to likely have numerous tornadoes, but very, very intense ones are going to be highly possible and borderline likely today to see very intense tornadoes. I think we had something like 28 tornado reports yesterday, 27, something like that. More will probably trickle in. But we didn't even expect yesterday to be the bigger tornado day. We expect more today. This outbreak overall is going to might even push 100 tornadoes. We're likely to look at least 60, 70 tornadoes, might even push 100, like I said, unfortunately. So we are looking at crazy amounts of tornado reports already, and we expect that number to just soar. Now, so we know that the development is going to be sufficient based on everything we looked at. The rotation is going to be there. The ingredients for tornadoes are going to be there. We start to break into some more specific things like your significant tornado parameter. We can see this on the models. This is a tool that isn't perfect, but it does try to take the shear. It does try to take other kind of attributes and try to come up with the availability in the atmosphere for major tornadoes. And obviously the higher up towards the reds and pinks you are, the worse, the better chance there is for these significant tornadoes. Again, this isn't a perfect tool, so I don't want you guys to see that like, oh, the pinks never got to my area, I'm not going to have as big of a chance of big tornadoes. I just want to show you this tool. It is interesting, but it's not perfect, so keep that in mind. But as we just kind of work our way through this, we see that parameters already going crazy for Mississippi and Alabama this morning. This is 11 a.m. This is before I'm recording this video. This is while I'm recording this video, and we see a lot of this pink and purple being shoved up into Mississippi here. As we keep going, we see those whites popping up. We see those whites popping up well across Mississippi and starting to move into Alabama here. And look at the bottom right. I mean, look at the bottom in general. I mean, our scale goes from 0 to 10. Our max here that this model is picking up on is 21.21. So we are double the scale. We're over double the scale for this significant tornado parameter. So that should show you just the potential that we have today. And that next frame right here at 4 p.m., we have a 26 on the significant tornado parameter somewhere in here. I would imagine it's this little dot that I'm underlining here. So we are looking at dangerous storms. Again, a lot of this is obvious. We have a high risk, but I just want to show you the real severity of this situation. We're still at an 18 by the time they're moving into Alabama. We're at a 9 here, 13, 15, 11, 15, 13. And again, I mean, you only really need to be, everybody has a chance of significant tornadoes today in these areas, but I mean, for me to be very concerned, you only need to be in the orange or reds here, and that would be a very bad look. But we're well into the purples, and almost every frame we're breaking the scale. We're beyond the even 10. So crazy stuff. This moves into Georgia, and we eventually start to lose some of that potential, although we're still at a 6.8, which again is still very concerning. So for southwestern Georgia, the Florida Panhandle, I'm still concerned for tornadoes for that area as well. But these numbers are just out of control. Another interesting one we can look at is the supercell composite index, and it's kind of the same thing. We're looking at supercells instead of just specifically tornadoes. Obviously, supercells are very bad storms that would really strongly indicate that strong tornadoes are possible. This particular scale goes from 0 to 50. So it's kind of the same thing, just times it by 5. And I want to move us to when I'm recording this. So at 1 p.m., we have a max of 43. We have very high values basically throughout the entire area. So good chance of seeing supercells throughout all the red areas. But these purples is where we could have really intense supercells with hook echoes, and eventually again those strong tornadoes, especially when we combine this value with that significant tornado parameter. We have just rip roaring values here as well. So we're breaking out the interesting tools. Just thought that would be interesting to show you guys. Now here's another really interesting one. This is the accumulated maximum updraft helicity, and really we're just looking at these storms with rotating basically rotating supercells. We're looking at wall clouds here. This doesn't necessarily mean tornadoes, and the locations aren't perfect. It's still a model, but the main reason I wanted to show you guys this wasn't for the specific locations, because that's still an imperfected science, but more so the amount of these in the just, I mean, this has got to be 100 different areas dealing with rotating supercells just right here for the day today. This is through this is all the way until 5 a.m. Sunday. So from now to 5 a.m. Sunday. And we see some big areas, throughout northern Louisiana into northern Mississippi. The most concerning one here seems to be over eastern Mississippi. These models continue, or at least this one, on every single parameter: the significant tornado, the supercell composite, the Cape, this one even here. It continues to look like eastern Mississippi might be the hot spot. I suspect that these worst conditions could just trickle right into Alabama. I feel like when we have these outbreaks, typically Alabama unfortunately gets hit the worst. Obviously, there's no science behind that for the most part. Really, Mississippi and Alabama have equal climates, equal chance of these types of things. But I feel like these storms typically don't just stop at the Mississippi-Alabama border. I really feel like we're going to see all of this bad stuff just continue right on into Alabama. Wouldn't even be surprised if Alabama gets it worse than Mississippi. It's a toss-up at this point, and the Storm Prediction Center agrees for the most part, as the high risk is almost equally shared between both states. So just a really bad day overall. The last one we're going to look at is the simulated radar. We put all of this together: the Cape, the humidity, the temperatures, the shear, the significant tornado parameter, and we get the radar. We get what actually is going to be occurring. So I'm going to move us towards 1 p.m. and this is approximately what we saw on radar. I'd say this is semi-accurate. We're seeing these thunderstorms developing throughout areas of western and central Mississippi into southern Louisiana. Supercells starting to get going in a lot of these areas. And as we move the hours forward, we see that this initial area that's over Mississippi kind of moves up and out. Okay, so we end up with those storms still impacting areas of Tennessee, northern Alabama, northern Mississippi, and it seems like another sector starts to move through Louisiana and south central Mississippi. And obviously this isn't high resolution enough to see every detail, but it does look like we have some significant supercells developing in there. This is by 3 p.m. 4 p.m. that starts to just take over for eastern Mississippi. And then it's around 5, 6 p.m. Eastern where we start to see some of these storms trickling into Alabama. 7, 8, they're moving into Alabama even more. Still, especially the further south you go, eastern Mississippi is still seeing these bad thunderstorms even by 8 p.m. And then that southern quadrant starts to move through Alabama when we're talking about 10 p.m., 11 p.m., 12 a.m. here. They're moving across Alabama, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., starting to trickle into Georgia now in the Florida Panhandle. And then eventually they're all but moved out by the time we're looking at like 4 or 5 a.m. So this is going to be an all day, all night event for these states, and it's going to be nasty, guys. Again, borderline historic territory for the Storm Prediction Center because they issued a day 2 high risk. Almost every high risk we've ever had in the history of the Storm Prediction Center has been issued on the day of events. It's been upgraded from moderate to high on the day of those events happening. And I want to say this is like the 6th time in the history of the Storm Prediction Center, at least the way they operate now, issuing a day 2, so the day prior, issuing a high risk. So that tells us that this is not looking good, and they've known this for since yesterday. So this is just a really bad situation. As high potential as any outbreak we've ever had. This needs to be taken very, very seriously, and I can't stress this enough. I feel like this severe weather season is off to one of the quickest starts that I have ever seen. So I have a bad feeling about the entire season overall. Just looking at what we've seen, what we're seeing today, tomorrow, yesterday, and what we're expected to see over the coming weeks in the models that we've been looking at, more storms, maybe not high risk, but more similar storms moving across the nation. I just don't see it slowing down throughout the entire month of March. So we've got our hands full, guys. We have got our hands full. Be sure to subscribe. We upload every single day. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below. And on a day like today, most importantly, stay safe. Heed every watch, warning, and advisory. Please just have a phone next to you at all times. I mean, it's 2025. We all pretty much do. So that's kind of crazy advice, but just do it. Just make sure you have those alerts coming in because these things are moving quick. They're happening fast. And the potential for deadly tornadoes is sky high today. So please heed every watch, warning, and advisory. I will see you guys in the next video. Be safe.